And the rig is really easy and simple to put together. So there's the mono rig. So the first thing we do is we put the tail on. We can put the tail on in a couple of areas. We can have it inside, like so, or we can have it at the back. So we'll just put it at the back. So the reason I've got these two beads in here is to lock this mono in place, and also to create a loop if I want to add a wave tail or a dragon tail on the back here. So we're just going to move these beads inside like so, and we're going to bring that loop through the hook so it locks and it can't move anywhere. And to thread these on first time, I'm just using a small length of mono, and I'm literally just feeding it through the loop and then through the tube like so. So it comes at the end, grab the two ends and then pull tight. It's a bit tight at the beginning because that mono loop isn't formed, but once you've done it once or twice you'll find that mono tends to become tighter. So you don't actually need this length of mono to put that on. And to lock that in place, we're just using a clip. Any clip will do. You can make them yourself as well with wire. I've just for time and convenience, I'm just using a fast out type clip. This one's actually a H2O spiral clip, which I use for all my tails. Okay, and that just keeps that flash tail in place, like so. If you were going to put it in there, you don't really need a clip on the back. That tail's not going to go anywhere. Now for the front of the fly, we'll show you on the tube that I've just tied. If I can find it. What have I done with it? Not sure that's the one. It's here. There we go. So that's what I've just tied. It's not quite finished yet. It needs coating on the head, and I've measured that up, that shank up, so I know it's maybe marginally a bit big. But we're just going to feed that on through. I can find it. Here we go. Goes on nice and quick. There we go. So that's in place, ready to fish, just like that. So the advantage of putting the tube over the shank is, obviously with traditional tube flies you have to change the whole leader setup, and I'm such a lazy angler, and when I first started pike fly fishing I used tubes a lot because that's all I saw that people were tying, and I got fed up with it, and I struggled casting them as well. I found I was tying them far too big for my waters. So I think this way is a good way of using tubes, and also you can, because you've got the eye, you can change the fly quickly if you need to. You've got that, you've got a free movement with the eye being there, and when you clip it up for that fly to move well in the water, whereas whether you've got the leader coming straight through the eye, you sort of lose a little bit of that movement. So yeah, so there we go. So it's dead easy to tie. The rigs are very easy to make. You can change this fly whenever you want. If your fly gets beaten up or your hook gets blunt and you need to change your hook, you don't have to chuck away the fly. I recommend tying a few of these up for your box along with your traditional, standard hook flies, and give it a go. And if you do, let me know how you get on. Testing so far, I've done really well on these. I'd caught a nice fish the other day on a very similar pattern without the flash tail, just a single tube at the front on the shank, and some flashy boo and some feathers out the back, and it worked a treat. And I didn't snag any debris. There's lots of snags in my river. I didn't snag up once. So that's, for me, that's great, because I lose flies a lot. So there we go. Right, for the mono rig, we're going to be using the Texas PR380 Texas Predator hook. So these ones, so they do a 1-0, a 3-0 and a 5-0, and it really depends on what size you want. For, I'd say 5 to 6 inch flies, you know, the 3 zeros is plenty, because the hook's going to be slightly further back, but I'll explain that once I've put the rig together so you can see it. But what you need to do with these hooks, or what I've found a better hookup, as I've mentioned at the start, is you need to bend them a little bit. This is where I've put my pliers down and I can't find them. There we go. So what we do with this is we just put the eye into the plier, and I want to bend it just enough, very slowly. I mean, you can heat this if you want, but we're trying to create an angle where the shank part hits dead center of the hook. So when it swims like that, so that hook is higher than the eye. And what I found with worm hooks, or you know, these sort of predator style hooks, is when they swim like that, there isn't really anything to catch the pike's lip. There's just not enough hook exposed. And by doing this, I've found I get better hookups. The only negative is I wouldn't say it was fully weedless, but it's a lot more weedless than your standard hook. I haven't had any weed in my river really to test that out properly, but I have a lot of snags and a lot of debris, and I haven't caught once, so I'm pretty confident they're going to be good in weed as well. And the fly material acts really as a bit of a weed guard anyway, so if you're coming over, it's going to brush over, and because you've got that barb pointing downwards, the weed is not likely to catch on it so much. It's just going to hit the top and carry on. So let's tie this up. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to add a little bit of weight, because we've changed the dynamics, you know, the weight distribution of this hook. We need to add a little bit of weight just to the bend. So I'm just using standard lead wire. You can use whatever wire you've got. I'm just going to wrap a few wraps around there. It's not an exact science. I haven't played around too much with how much to add here, but I usually would say probably about 6 to 8 wraps is enough of medium lead wire, just to create that tipping point. And I've not had any problems with keeling with this hook so far. So we're going to add a little bit of UV around that just to secure it in place. I mean, the beauty of this rig is if this weight isn't enough, you just cut it out and add a little bit more. You don't have to build a new fly. I mean, you could tie that down, but I mean, there's absolutely no point doing that. Just put a bit of UV resin around it, just to keep it in place. There we go. So that's that. Right, for the next step, we need to turn that hook. We'll keep that hook like that. Make sure we're good. There, we need some monofilament, or we could use fluorocarbon, but we need quite a stiff material, stiff mono, just to support any tail that you have off the back there. So what I'm using is 60 pound, which is 0.03. For anybody that needs to know, I'm going to cut in a piece probably about 15 to 20 centimeters. It's more than what I need, but I can cut the tags off. And we're going to put some beads. I really like these fluorescent glow-in-the-dark beads, and I picked these up off eBay. Very, very cheap. And these are 5mm beads, and they've got a hole that's just perfect for locking, making mono loops. Because if you see my previous videos, I don't tend to use wire for holding tails. I tend to use mono, heavy mono, locked with a bead. It's far cheaper and far simpler. I've never had any problems with it. I'm not using stingers on my flies, so it's absolutely no need to use wire. But that's up to you. You do whatever you want to do. So what we're doing with this, we want to create a little tag end so we can change at the tail options. So we're looking for maybe just under an inch at the end there, maybe less than that. Okay, like so. So I'm just going to put some thread, tie the thread down, like so. Take your loop. We want to leave an inch at the back, inch maybe slightly less, depends how large you want to tie that tube or how long you want it. Not too long. If it's too long, then you struggle to hold the tail. Tie that on top, and then take one tag end and bring it back underneath and tie that down. Now what you could do, you could tie, leave those tag ends and use them as a weed guard if you like, but I find that interferes with the material a bit, and I haven't really needed to do that, but that's an option. Just cut that tag end off. Maybe you don't use your fly tying scissors like I just did, and then do the same on the other side. Tie that down, cut the tag end off, like so. Whip finish. Get some UV resin or some super glue. I'm just going to use UV resin because it's quick and it will dry quick. Once I set it, give it some good coverage. There we go, that'll do. So that's the hook part done. Next we need to add a shank to the front of that so we can mount the tube. Now what I tend to do, I don't tend to buy shop bought shanks anymore. I used a one-step looper, and this is a 2.25mm. It creates a 2.25mm loop. So what we need to do, we need to measure what we need. So I'm just going to cut a length of 1mm stainless steel, which I find is a good all-round diameter. And what you need for this is one of these jewellery round nose tools. We're going to make the shank very, very quick. Now, what I don't like about shop bought shanks, or some of them, is that I find the eye not particularly secure. I just need a little bit more reassurance of making sure that eye does not pull out. So what we do, we're going to measure up the shank, and what we want it to come over the hook as well. So we don't have to do that, we can have it as an articulated hook, or we can have it coming over. You'll get more of a secure connection if it comes over the hook, but that's completely up to you. So we're measuring that shank. I'm thinking about here, doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to create the other loop like so. I'm going to bend it around, so I've got a bit of wire that looks a bit like that, and I get my one-step looper. I'm going to feed it in. It's difficult to show you on this camera. If you want to know how to make these, go and check out Norbert's tutorial on that, and that's where I got the idea from. I'll do the same for the other side. Just form those loops. grab our wire cutters, just trim those tags down. So that's quite a long one actually. Might have made that a little bit too long. No, that's about right. So that's probably about, I don't know, just under an inch. You can make them long, short, you have a play around with it. So we're just going to feed that through and we're going to put that into the vise. Now what I like about the Pike is that it holds shanks better. Okay, so just going to put that in. I don't get any movement whatsoever. It's got really good strong jaw. And that was the only criticism I really had about the anvil. It didn't quite have enough grip. I'm going to put some thread wraps down to secure those loops up. I'm doing this in a rush because otherwise it's going to be a very, very long video. We don't want a long video. Make sure they're tight. Don't want this to come apart. Now this is completely optional, but what you can do if you want to have a jiggy fly, or you want to get that fly down a bit quicker, just add a bit of weight. Add as much as you need. I'm not going to tell you exactly what you need to add because every fly is different. It's impossible to tell you. Play around with it. Add a bit of wire in there. Come over with the UV resin, lock it in place. And if you don't like the way it is, just cut the shank out and tie another one. Mustn't forget to whip finish. Let's give it a good coat. Like so. Here we go. So this shank is actually a little bit longer than what I usually do, but it really depends on the size of the tube fly. I mean, these short tube flies are, you don't need a too long a shank. So that's the mono rig, and this is how we put it together. Right, for the tube we've got a tube work system here. So I'm not sure what size this is. I think it's 2mm. We're just putting that on the underneath just to support the larger tube. And the larger tube, I bought these a long time ago from flytying.eu. I'm pretty sure they're barra tubing, but I need to check that, and I'll put the accurate tube description in the YouTube description. Okay, so we're just going to slot that over the top. We're not going to need all that tube. Probably going to need about an inch or so, but we can cut it off once we finish the fly. So let's lay down some thread. And the thread I'm using is GSP 100. Start a little bit too far there, so let's put some down here. Now, the problem with these double needles is they're a bit sharp on the end, so if you're not used to using one, just be careful. What I need to do with this one is probably just chop the end off by an inch or so, because it's a little bit awkward when you're winding. You keep catching it and you'll scratch yourself. Just going to lay some thread down. Now we don't want to come right to the end here. I'll leave at least 5mm because that tube needs to be able to move. And once you've laid the thread down on it, it makes it quite rigid and difficult to get over the hook eye. Put some glue down on top. You can use super glue if you want. I'm using liquid fusion. It buys me a little bit more time because it doesn't set straight away. And for those who have never watched my videos before will know full well that I can't use super glue or epoxy resins because I'm allergic to them. Now grab some bucktail. I want quite a long piece of bucktail here, so the longest fibres tend to be nearer the base. So choose some long fibres. As I said many times before, just take the short butts out. You don't want those in there. So you're left with something a little bit like that. Take any real long ones out as well. It's not too bad in there. We don't quite need that full length, so I'm just going to chop a little bit off the end. And we're just going to lay this down normal style. So make sure those butts are even to make the tying process a little bit tidier. And then wrap round the top 3 times and just use your thumb to manipulate that material around so it's fully covered. Pull tight and come down over the butt section and tie them down. Don't be tempted to cut them short near where you've tied down tight because you're likely to lose them otherwise. Just tie them down to the shank. And another thing to remember, when you're tying on these tubes, they're quite soft. So if you tie down too tight, you end up squashing the tube onto the inner tube here. Okay, so and obviously it's going to narrow. Once you take that inner tube out, that narrows the area for when you're sliding it over the hook. So just bear that in mind. You don't want to tie down too tight, but tight enough to keep that bucktail in place. Right, next we need some flash, and you can use any flash you want. There's you know, do whatever. Use Magnum, use standard, hollow, use polar. I like to use head-run polar flash in these, and also the original fashionable. Now this isn't the original. The original is actually better than this. This is just another brand that I've managed to pick up because I've run out. So I'm just substituting with what I'd normally use. The original fashionable is a very limp material and has plenty of movement, and that's why I like it for these flash tail flies. Take not too many. You don't need too much flash, so probably about that much for the silver, and for the polar flash about the same amount again. We're just going to blend them up. So like that. We don't want that full length because we're going to taper this, so I'm just going to take about an inch and a half off, and I'm just going to mix this with my fingers. The trouble with polar is quite sticky material, it doesn't separate too well, so you just need to spend a bit of time doing this and taper those ends to make sure there's no straight edges. Do the same on the other side. Now we're going to tie this down. My favourite saying is 60-40. So 60 on the back. We're going to lay that on top. We're going to spread it around as much as we can. Not too much. We don't want too much on the bottom, although I don't think it really matters. Like that. And then we're just going to manipulate the 40 around the whole of the fly, like so. Right, next we're going to make a dubbing loop. I might seem a little bit caggy-handed with these tubes. I haven't tied on them for about 3 years, so I'm just getting used to it again. And you might have noticed also that I'm tying on a new vise. So this is a Pike rotary, which I'm preferring to my Anvil Atlas. Although the Anvil Atlas is a good vise, very good vise, I just prefer the hook hold with these, especially when you're tying on shanks. More about that later. Right, so we just created a dubbing loop. We added some wax. It's very important to add wax to dubbing loops, otherwise you'll lose that material. We now need to add some glue down where we tie this flash in, and along where we're going to tie the dubbing loop, just to make this fly nice and secure. A little probably like that. Right, so for the dubbing loop, if you've seen my previous video, you know I used yellow and orange for the head. I really like this, how these colours combine. So we're going to do the same for the midsection before we tie the last piece of bucktail in. So what I'm doing with this, I should have really prepared this earlier, but I'm just taking a very thin strip of yellow and I'm cutting it into inches on my vice pedestal very quickly, and I'm going to do the same with the orange. So orange, same amount again. You get that nice sunburst colour, and the reason I'm adding the strong fuzzy fibre in the middle of the fly, because it adds a bit of volume and it also supports that bucktail, and it also gives that nice colour, that sort of orange, hint of yellow and orange through the white of the bucktail. And obviously these things can act as a trigger point and also make the fly look very nice. So we're just going to add that to the dubbing loop. Now these dubbing loops don't always go to plan, so I'm hoping it goes to plan this time. So the key is to spread that material as much as you can, as evenly as possible. Probably could have done a little bit more yellow there, but it doesn't matter. Just want a hint of yellow in, and we're going to spin this up. Like so. There we go. Bodkin, and just go through any that have not quite spun properly and caught around each other. There's a few in there. Give it another spin. There we go. You'll find you'll get a few gaps like I have there. Don't worry about that too much. I'll just pull those out afterwards. Just the way it goes. It doesn't have to look too pretty. You just need to create a little bit of volume. We've got plenty of orange in here to do that. So I'm going to just fold that back. I'm going to wrap that round. One thing about the Pike, it comes with a bobbin cradle, and I tell you what, I just haven't got used to using it, so I'm not using it for this. It would look really strange if I did. I'm just going to do the way I always do it, just wrap it round. Like so. Tie that down, and then come over the top, come forward, cut that out, and with your bodkin, just go through and pick any caught fibres. There'll be a few in there. Pick them out. Try and build that volume as much as possible. Use your rotary vise to do that. There we go. So there's probably a bit more yellow on my side than there is yours, but that's cool. Pike don't care, or whatever predatory fish that you're fishing for. Excuse the background noise, I have a cat that's quite lively at the moment. Right, for the next section, for the underside, we're going to do white again. So we're going to grab some bucktail. I'm getting quite low on this white. We'll take the under fibres out. Get rid of any super long ones, I think we're okay. Now we don't need the full length of that. Let's measure this up. So we're looking to about there. Take off those butts, spin this round. Tie that down on top. And for the top we're going to go for a grey. And you can tie it white if you want. We're going to cover it with a grey Nyapp dubbing anyway, so it's up to you. Like I said, don't copy this exactly. Come up with your own colour scheme or whatever. This is just really for reference to give you an idea of how we're tying the tube. Of course, I like seeing people that just like to follow instructions exactly, but the whole point of it is to maybe get you thinking about how to tie these and come up with your own colour scheme and make it unique to yourself rather than just copying what I'm doing. Here we go. So we're putting the grey on top. We're just going to spread that butt tail around to make sure we've got full coverage. We're going to hold those butts. We don't want them to move. We're going to pull down tight, but not too tight, over the top. Now we're just going to trim those butts. I'm not tying this bulkhead style, so I want those butts slightly shorter. But what I'm going to show you in a minute will speed up your tying a little bit. And it's nothing new. Musky guys have been doing it for some time. We're going to reverse tie again. Now we don't want a real super steep angle. And what I suggest you do is, if I can find my pusher backer, we're going to reverse tie rather than hollow tie. We don't need a hollow tie all the time. A lot of people do it all the time. They just don't need to. And then they put these massive thread dams down and use up all the thread. Just push that back. Now we want a 45-degree angle. And you can achieve that reverse tie. And you can save an awful lot of thread by doing that. So I'm going to come over twice. Pull down. There we go. We've got a 45-degree angle. Or if not, a little bit more. I don't want this to be a big fat fly, fat head. I want it to follow the baitfish profile. And as you can see from there, we've got a lovely wide profile all the way around, which is what I'm looking for. Whoops, let's do that again. I should have tied down. Here we go. Come over a few times. Too busy talking. There we go. So that holds firm now. What I want to do is put a bit of glue down on that. So, right, for the head and for the last part, this is a very quick fly to tie. We're going to use my favourite head material, and that's Nyatt. So I've got two shades of grey and some black, and we're going to use white on the bottom. But what we're going to do on the bottom as well is we're going to just mix a little bit of pike skins with it, because my white is it's a bit softer than my other Nyatts. So I just want to create a sort of coarser mix, and we're going to mix that with some Angelina. So I'm just going to quickly do that now. I'll show you as we go through how to do it. So we want equal measures, not too much. You can always take some away before you tie in. So we're talking about that much Nyatt. Doesn't need to be the super long stuff either. I'm going to take the grey. Now if you're tying a bigger fly, then you may need to mix some grey pike skins or whatever colour that you're tying into it, just to lengthen that back out a bit. But I mean, that's completely up to you. Right, that's good. And then we want to grab some Angelina fibre. This is just cheap stuff that you pick up from anywhere. I think they refer to it as angel hair, but to be honest, you'll be saving a lot of money if you go and Google Angelina fibre and go and buy it from I don't know, lots of places sell it, but go and do a search. So you just want to mix this up to get all those colours blended nice. I've got quite a dark back on this one because I've had quite a bit of black, which is fine. I like that on my fly. Another thing with Nyatt as well is, and I've mentioned it before, when you take the underfur out, just take the first ½ inch max. Leave the rest of it in there, because if you're using it to tie heads, to build heads, then you need that underfur to build that bulk. A lot of guys that I see take it out and then not really left with very much. So there we go, so that's nice and blended. What I'm just going to do is take those long fibres and lay them on top. So I've got the length towards the back end, and when I fold over, I haven't got any super long ones, but it's nice and tapered. Well, you can see that. I'm just going to tie that down on top. I want it to come all the way around the fly, I just want it to be on the top half. There we go. A few wraps to tie that down. We're going to create the whites. And for the whites, we've got a very long naiad here, and I don't need all that. Now, the good thing about naiad is that it takes a cut very well, much better than Icelandic sheep does. So we're just going to cut that in half. I'm just going to lay that on my pedestal. I'm going to grab some white pike skins. You can use whatever synthetic you've got. You need something with a little bit of wave in it. And I'm going to cut those slightly longer. I'm just laying that on my pile. And I'm grabbing some sort of pearlescent Angelina, quite a lot of that. And I'm going to mix that all together. Now, if you've not used naiad before, I recommend it. I really do. It's a very good material. It's not too buoyant. It's very coarse, so that means it stands up to pike's teeth or any other predator fish that you're fishing for that have teeth. So, it's very robust. It moves well in the water if you use it for tails. It's a great material, and it's very versatile, and it's very easy to build heads with as well. I understand it's not available in some countries, but it's one of those things. If you want a material, you have to maybe spend a bit of money on postage. I definitely recommend it. So we're just taking those long fibres out. I want to tie this down. My favourite saying, 60-40. Wrap that round. Then we're going to finish that off with a whip finish. Just going to grab our comb. We're just going to brush that back, tidy it up. Right, add a bit of glue down to this before we start putting the eyes on. Do the same on the other side. So the good thing about liquid fusion is it tends to soak through the material, and it creates a good strong bond then. So we're just going to fold that back as tidy as we can. Grab our comb and just give it a comb back. I think it's looking good on your side, yeah. So you can see that orange coming through. Hold that, and then we're going to do the same for the underside. I'm going to spread that round with our thumb, like so. Go, and then we're going to grab our hair clip, which has gone missing. There it is. I'm just going to check we've got those evenly distributed. There we go. That's pretty good. So next we need to put some eyes on. So I'm a big fan of Deer Creek eyes. They've got lots of options there. I do like the Roachy Green, you've probably seen that. The Volcano is another favourite of mine. And these are 10mm. And what I like about the Deer Creek eyes is they're not over. There's not too much epoxy on them, so they're nice and flat. And I can manipulate them, bend them slightly, because we're going to cover this with UV resin anyway. So for this head, I'm going to be using the tear mender to soak in, so I can create the shape that I want. And obviously it creates a nice solid robust fly then as well. So we'll soak that all the way around. Like that. And I always put a little bit of gel glue liquid, what's this one? This is Serious Glue by Evastick. I haven't had a reason to change yet, so this is pretty good. Put some glue down. Maybe a bit more than what I've done. There we go. Put the eyes on. Do the same on my side. Take that away. So what we're doing, we're going to manipulate that material so it's not behaving itself. So I'm going to put the clip back on until that's set. And it gives me a bit more time to. What you have to do with these eyes, obviously, as that sets, the best you can do is just take this out. As that sets, we want to just squeeze those eyes a bit more, make sure they're lined up properly. You can use a peg, but I find with pegs I get one chance with them, and once that glue's set, you haven't got them lined up. At least with this glue, you've got a little bit of time. Right, for the head, once the tear mender is set and fully dried, I then just coat with Deer Creek UV fine flex material, UV resin. So I'd like to, when I put the UV on, I like to excuse me, I like to hold the fly, so if you've got a bit more control over it. Before I do that, I just check the head to make sure that there's no colour variation. Is how I want. And in this case, I'm just going to put some black Sharpie over it, just to change the colour a little bit, darken it up. So what I tend to do with this, I don't know how well you can see this on the camera, I'm just put some UV epoxy resin between the eyes. I'm just using a torch to set that. Like so. Oh, we've got a cat coming. Cat. Out the way. Out the way. Go away. And we do the underside. Make sure we've got good coverage. And use the UV torch again. It's a bit boring watching this. I'm going to cover the eyes. Give them a good covering. Makes them last longer. You should always cover your eyes with UV or liquid fusion or epoxy resin, because they will come off. So a lot of tyres tie that don't. I'm the same with my own. I'm very lazy with them, and I always regret it. There you go. Make sure that's set. Now for the flash tail, we're going to use the smaller tube. You don't need to use the big tubes. So I'm just going to put some thread down. And we need, I don't know, about 3/4 of an inch. Just enough to tie two lots of flash. Let's put some glue down. Stop that thread slipping. And again, we're going to use the polar, and we're going to use the original Flashy Boo. So I take not too much, I don't know how many strands are there, probably about 20 or so. Lay that down, do the same again. The polar, lay it down. Depends how long you want the flash tail. I mean, I'm just going to take an inch off that, slightly too long. I'm just going to move it with my fingers, taper it like so. There we go. That looks pretty good. I'm going to tie that down. 60-40 again. We're going to try and wrap it as much as we can around the tube. And we're going to pull that back so we get coverage all the way around. And we're going to come forward. And we can take the same amount again. The polar. And we're going to cut it 60-40. So we need to remember 60-40. And same again for the original flashy boo. Cut it exactly the same way. Lay on top of each other. There we go, we've got a good load there. Take the long bits away. Give it a mix of your fingers. Give it a shake as well. Crinkle it up. Completely up to you what you want to do. Taper it. Just whack it on. Doesn't have to be precise. There we go. Wrap it around the hook. Tie over. Come back. Tie it down. Whip finish. Always a bit tricky with finishing with a tube. You need big fingers. Down. Just run your scissors through there because there's a few that are caught. That looks good. A bit of UV or super glue, whatever you want. Just over the top. I'm using UV to speed up. Like so. I'll do. Take your tube out and give it a trim. Just like that. There's something I didn't show you earlier. There we go. So that fly's pretty much set now, so I can put some UV on the head. Take the inner tube out, we don't need that. Trim. Leave about 3mm. Grab your lighter. Just gently heat the end. Don't come right to the eye because you want a little area for the UV to go. There we go, there you have it.